There's no rules! There's one rule!
Welcome back to the No Mulligans podcast. It's Scott and Jack here in the studio at Franklin Bridge. Thank you all for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing, giving a thumbs up, 5 stars, all of that. It really helps us when other people are searching for podcasts similar to this. So if you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe or leave us a thumbs up. It'll also make sure that when we release a new episode, it pops up and wherever you guys listen to podcasts. So if you guys want to be tuned into what is going on in the No Mulligans universe. Did I say Champions Playbook earlier? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
you're good.
I
was looking at your Mulligans hat while you said No Mulligans.
Yeah, I'm having some.
I remember that one.
That's right. Okay, good. But today we are going to talk about my lesson here with Scott. I'm lucky to be able to get Scott, and it's not like I have all access to you, but it's that I think we're good enough friends, and I'll say air quotes, work together in a lot of ways to where I think it really, I can really sell out to your teaching. So I want to talk about it a lot.
I've done that before, and it actually doesn't always go well. Like talking to other teaching professionals, like sometimes teaching your friends actually doesn't go very well.
Interesting.
And it's not because the relationship dynamic's not there. It's because there's no buy-in.
Interesting. So let's talk about that in the context of me then, with just the differences between that. And again, this is not, let's pump Jack's tires the whole episode. But
yeah.
I do want to talk about that.
Well, I think one of the things that, in order for me to answer this, I have to think about there are people I've tried to help along the way that I haven't made them pay, right? I've given it to them for free, just seeing the situation in their life. And I tell you what, they do not change as much as somebody who even pays $5. When there's some skin in the game,
yeah,
they tend to work better. When there's a cost to me, and
they don't want it to be lost resources,
right?
Yeah.
And so I did that a little bit early on in my teaching. After I had a few years, I've got some money in the bank, and I can actually afford to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
Then I put some skin in the game for them, even if they couldn't afford it. Hey, I need you to do some work for me. All right. Hey, here's my business card. I need you to give it to 5 people.
Yeah.
Right. Even something like that is enough. Because now they have to be uncomfortable to walk up to somebody and give them a business card.
Or they feel like they owe you in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Yep.
So when there is some cost on their side, they tend to do better. Now, I think in some ways, the payment that you're paying me is your work to help with the podcast, right?
I would agree.
Cost.
I would totally agree.
I don't think it's conscious.
It's not conscious, and it doesn't even feel like work. I feel privileged to be able to do this.
Right. Well, and I think you view now there are exceptions, I think, but they tend to view the opportunity in its correct light. All right, wow, what I'm getting motivates me. If you go from the Christian perspective, what motivates people is not the laws and the rules that are in Scripture, right? It's actually the love that's been shown to them. If the deeper they understand that, the better they show that outwardly.
Yeah, that's good.
The better they understand the vertical, the better they understand they give the horizontal. That's just really an example, right? You can give 1,000 different examples, but you understand the depth of what's being given to you. Man, what a great opportunity. Somebody invites you to go to the Masters, right? If you understand how great it was to be invited to go to the Masters with somebody, you write a thank you letter, you spend time with them, you thank them multiple times throughout the year.
Wow.
You find a way to give back to them. You understand the cost of that and the opportunity that it is to go there.
And you know what I think it is for me? Number one, I think I just have a good viewpoint, a good point of view in how I view my golf game and where I want to be, and a lot of that comes from my athletic background. But also, I think I understand how good my potential can be and how good of a teacher I have that's helping me uncover that.
And I think it would be for not asking those questions.
It would be a waste of my own potential and what I want golf to be for me if I did not use the opportunity to the fullest.
So the cost to you is, if I don't use this, what is the chance I'm going to have this again in my life?
Not only
without a financial dollar.
No, not only that, but also the fear of regret if I if I don't maximize.
It's kind of saying the same thing. Yeah. I'm like, man, it was at a teaching conference this last week in Pinehurst, and the guy that's the presenter for it, he heads up the Golf Range Association and puts all this stuff together. And he said, I worked for this lady right over here the first couple of years of my, being a golf professional, and she said, you can come watch me teach anytime you want. And she offered multiple times. He said, that's the biggest regret. If I could go back and change one thing in my career, I'd go spend time and learn from her.
Wow.
And he said, but that's what he didn't realize what he had until it was gone. You don't know what you got till it's gone. They paid Paradise to put up a parking lot, right?
Say that slower.
Yeah.
Say that slower.
Oh, the song, they paid Paradise to put up a parking lot, right? You don't know what you got till it's gone is the lyric before that, right?
Yep.
And so, that's unfortunately, where we get stuck. And I don't think you see the cost of being in, if I don't take advantage of this, you're going to have regret for it. I realize I'm a good athlete. I'm sure I could go play in, rec league, church league, softball, right? I could do any of those, but it's not the same as what I played at. But golf has the opportunity to be something that's that challenging to you. You love a challenge. You enjoy the challenge. You want to be challenged. So when we get past some of the, hey, here's a lesson tidbit there, here's a lesson tidbit here, we normally only get those, a couple times a year, 2 or 3 deep lessons.
Yeah. And
I happened to take the day off on a Wednesday because I needed it. And I was like, I could go in and I'm going to just take the day off. And so we had the opportunity where I wasn't rushed for time. You weren't rushed for time. Let's get some work on your golf game and really push. And
coincidentally, right before we record the podcast.
Right. Yeah. It happened to be perfect. And so it was nice to do those deep work because I don't get to do that much. I get to do it basically for 4 months of the year. And the longer I teach, the more of those students I'm getting. They're paying a higher price, right? And so you're getting a higher cost, regardless of what it is relative to their income level. People still view $175 an hour over $75 an hour. I don't care if you're making 7 figures or 4 figures. $175 is still viewed from an instruction standpoint as high value. Now, you may view it as it's not as big of a cost, but there's still value there. And so because of that, I'm going to give it more of my full attention.
Yeah. And so now I kind of want to dive more into the actual lesson itself, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in that.
I learned some things too. That was so cool. I was so excited about it.
But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into it.
Did your baseball swing screw up your golf swing? That's essentially the hot button topic, right?
Well, and I guess a little bit of context behind this is that growing up, and obviously golf and anatomy and science and all of that has changed over the past 26 years that I've been alive, right? And so the stereotype, all the way up until I would say probably about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5, would be that your baseball swing or your golf swing is going to mess up your baseball swing. And so
and vice versa
correct, and vice versa from a golf space. And so the way to counter that, up until 5 years ago, was okay, if you swing right-handed in baseball, you're going to learn to play golf lefty. Thinking that the two don't have any parallels.
Right. Which in some ways may have benefited power production in both sports.
Well, totally. There's probably some pros that come to that. Yeah, definitely. But the general principle has stayed the same, right? Yeah. And then as time's gone on and as baseball has evolved, people have realized that, if you can switch hit, you're really good.
Right.
You should be able to do both. And I think, and now
golfers
proven,
are the same way as well. Your highest level players, you turn them around left-handed, you're like, that looks like a pretty dang good golf swing.
Well, there's actually a video that the Barstool Foreplay podcast did with DJ, and he played lefty and beat a bunch of them, right?
Oh yeah, and he hit drives over 300 yards left-handed.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it was so insane. But it's not as crazy when you've been around it. Michael Johnson at Auburn, right-handed player, plays. He's a Korn Ferry guy. Won 5 tournaments at Auburn. I watched him hit a 7-iron left-handed one day with his teammates, and dude, he hit it 160 left-handed. I was like, what? On a string. But that's how good they are.
Totally.
And so baseball's not going to screw up his golf swing.
Right. And
but it does require it requires a different approach from me, for sure.
Oh, yeah, which I think is really good. So, I mean, I think the premise behind what we're going to talk about here is that that's not true. The old stereotypes are not true. If anything, the baseball swing helps the golf swing, and vice versa too.
Right.
But you and I were texting yesterday, and it's what kind of sparked this lesson here today. But I sent you a video of two of the most elite prospects in Major League Baseball right now. They're 18, 19 years old, and they are nuts just in their technique. This guy's dad was a former big leaguer. He's had every single training growing up, and I'm like, dude, just watch the way they are explosive throughout the ball. And you asked me some questions about I wish I knew what I was looking at, and then I kind of explained some things to you.
Yeah, I was like, I really, I know, like, if you appreciate it at that level,
that
it's worth appreciating at that level,
but
I don't understand enough to actually appreciate it at said level.
Bingo. And so we were texting back and forth and kind of drawing the parallels between the two, and just, he does it this way, but if we translate it like this in golf, it's the same thing, just different.
Right.
And so that kind of goes into, now I'll let you talk about what we worked on today with the golf swing and how that parallels.
So for a lot of my baseball players, a couple of things are absolutely incredible. So the first one is, I love baseball players because they have speed. Like, speed's never going to be an issue with you. And feel. So, like, being able to get the face on the ball is almost never a problem once they know where it's actually hit. Because sometimes when you're first new, you're like, I don't know if that was toe or heel. Like, but once you start to understand those differences, you can find the face from just about anywhere. Which is both really good and really dangerous.
Yes.
Because you can develop some really bad habits really quick that way.
And still find the face.
Right.
Yes. And you were talking about the heel and toe thing. It's funny because taking hundreds of thousands of rounds of batting practice throughout my years, like, you can tell exactly where the ball was hit, whether it was on the end of the bat, whether or not it was hit on the inside of the bat, whether or not it was a sweet spot. Like, you can tell. And so I'm not surprised, yet very surprised, that I can do the exact same thing with such a smaller surface area.
Right. It just took some discovery.
Bingo.
And so the danger with that is, like, you've been able to manipulate it a little bit to get what you want, and now I'm making a big push for you to be more fundamentally sound, and that's a harder push, but we're getting to see the levels at which, like baseball does run amok at some point. And it also has made sense why instinctually, remember I told Jamie, like, I actually don't like that I don't understand, like, when I do these things on just, like, instinct, it bothers me that I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Because I won't learn from it if I don't understand it.
Correct.
So this is the first time I understood why so many of my baseball players, I just make you keep your feet still and just swing your dang arms, and y'all friggin' smoke it, like, right out of the gate. And it looks like a magic trick, right?
Yeah, it does.
But it works. And it works because it takes the thing that makes baseball so much different from golf, which is baseball is fundamentally a center to trail leg pivot, and golf is fundamentally a center to forward leg pivot.
Exactly.
And so, like, those two fundamental things, like, that's where things run aground really fast for a baseball player. And so by keeping the feet flat on the, like, literally flat-footed, they can smoke it. And it's an all-arm swing. And your hand-eye coordination is so good, you're going to find the face every time.
Yep.
I can't do that necessarily with a beginner, although it does work there too. But it's such a wonderful. How much time we got? How much percent?
We got 8%.
Okay, we're gonna try. We're gonna squeeze this in as close as we can.
Yeah. Sorry if we talked fast.
But, like, so what we did fundamentally was, like, you keep trying to rotate your hips. I was like, your hips are going to rotate. That was my initial thought, right? Like, to try to sequence it. You don't need to force it to sequence. You've already got the sequence from baseball. We just got to get that, where that center of that pivot is, shifted.
It's so interesting, and I'm just now discovering this on the podcast too. When I'm playing baseball, or when I was playing baseball, it's the exact same thing. All I'm feeling is swinging the arms because I'm trying to find the ball in space, and the only way to do that subconsciously is just react with the arms, and the bottom half will follow.
Right.
I'm having a hard time with golf, and we talked about this last night on text, to where we were talking about the trigger point, right? Or like where you decide to swing, right? And with baseball, it's so instantaneous because you're reacting to a pitch that's coming towards you.
You're going to go every time until you decide not to.
Yep, bingo. Meanwhile, golf is the exact opposite. You have to decide when to pull the trigger, right? And that can lead to a lot of different
errors,
errors, and especially when you're trying to sequence things in certain orders. Really, you shouldn't. Golf at the highest level should be a reactionary game.
Oh, dude, say that again. Say that again. Not even at the highest level. At the lowest level,
that's a good point. But golf should be a reactionary game.
Yes,
but
it should.
Everybody thinks the opposite because they're like, "Oh, I've got so many swing thoughts in my head," and then you can never do them all, right?
Right. And they change the swing thought all the time. Fundamentally, in baseball, you don't change them that much.
Yep.
Y'all are a lot better at keeping the same swing thought because there's less like mud in the water, if you will. So it's so what we did was you got those legs to hold still, and you can stick it great. Like it's all just, we call it flicking it. People are like, well, you're not supposed to flick it. And, well, that's a whole nother podcast for another day. But you can actually flick it all you want, and you'll lag it every time.
Yep.
But then it's like, all right, what's the next tier? So what's the next fastest tier is really the next component for you is like, all right, we need to get the arms on the right plane at the top of the back, in the takeaway to the top of the backswing and to the finish, because that's the proper way to load the muscle, so it'll unload the same way every time.
Which we saw in film that I was doing in my best takes. Like I accomplished.
We made that adjustment.
Correct. So I accomplished tier 1. There's 3 tiers. I pretty much accomplished tier 1 as far as flicking it.
Correct.
Tier 2 was a little less. So, but I was still doing it, and that's kind of where I'm living right now.
Right, and the legs are still quiet, quiet on the ground. Like that's still in place.
And now to end it all off, let's talk about the step 3, which is where we were at.
The step 3 is the hard one, which is like, how do we actually get the hips to rotate?
Yep.
And once we finally,
hold on, because we discovered in step 3 that baseball was a center to trail leg movement, and golf is a center to front leg movement. And making that switch from the center to trail leg movement to the center to front leg movement, that is the hard part. That is the part where we're having to completely tear down my motor skills and build it back up from the golf swing.
Your body actually does know how to rotate.
Yes.
It's just along the wrong pivot point. And so then it made me make sense of like, why does the feet down work so well? Well, it forces you to keep the hips kind of right in the center.
Yep.
And if anything, they'll shift a little forward because the momentum of the club will pull you that way.
Bingo.
But why did you have the big lift in your hips and not have the shift forward the way we wanted in the rotation? Well, because your brain's smart enough to figure out, in order to get the face on the ball, I can't trail leg pivot. So like I'm going to create this like weird hybrid thing in the middle that stops it from going back, but
doesn't let it go forward.
Right. It just kind of hides it, and it's like you know, it's like taking what's the movie Office Space, where like the guy that's the employee, they keep moving him down, all he gets to keep is his stapler, like they move him into the back room, back down in maintenance until he's eventually fired, right? Like you basically have just kind of, he's still there. Right, so it's not fixed, but we actually started fixing it, and it took us multiple reps. Took us like trying to deconstruct in both of our heads what was keeping you from getting there. Back to the implicit memory is like, well, you know, like you just need to get your hip there. Why can't you get it there? Keep looking at video like, oh, because you keep trying to move it backwards, and you're like, but I'm trying to go this way, and then you go, well, that's what I was trying to do. I was like, well, that's not what I need you to do.
And before this, we were also thinking that, oh, I just need to work on flexibility and get open my hip, and we found out today that it is not that problem.
Would it help? Yeah, but
totally.
Like, it's not.
But it would help everybody too.
Right.
It's not unique to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that all of a sudden put a lot of switches together for me for my baseball players, which is like, hey, do we actually need to fix the hip thing? Yeah, but that's an 18-month fix at a minimum, assuming you practice 3 times a week and really grind on it with low ball count, high practice rep count, a lot of video work, like
a lot of dry swings.
And I think we'll eventually get you there.
I think so too.
But like you have something you can go play with right now. So. You have something that if you work on, like you can start to implement kind of mid-winter, late winter, early spring, and you'll probably come April, May have no problem playing with it. But the next one is, we're talking, let's see, 2024, middle to late 2025. will actually see the hips have the ability to start to do what they're supposed to do, because that motor pattern from baseball is so deep. But it doesn't mean it's ruining your golf swing. We just need to keep it at bay until it can be trained. And that's where the art of teaching is. Like, could we try to get your hips there in your very first lesson and really change it? Yeah, but you wouldn't play golf for very long. You'd quit. You'd change teachers. Like, you wouldn't be here at the bridge. Like, there's a lot of things that go into getting you there.
And what's so interesting to me is, first of all, you have to see the right teacher. And I can confidently say that there are some that aren't going to be able to take you to where you would take most people.
Well, no, I couldn't take. I mean, my first couple of years of teaching, there's a lot of people I couldn't take.
Yeah, bingo. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I feel like a lot of people have fundamental problems that will take a significant amount of time to fix at no fault of their own, but they will quit or try and find another teacher before it actually works.
Right.
Or not find the teacher that is willing to take them to that place.
Right. Well, no, I think if the student is ready to do that overhaul, then great. But in most cases, people aren't. And even when they are, you still can't take them all the way there. You have to give them some teasers, which is what I'm seeing in CTC, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to understand human motivation, right? I'm asking you to undo the natural bend of... Sorry, whoops. I'm working on my... speaking into the toner here. I'm working on the natural bend of Americans is to have everything right now. Well, can I just go hit golf balls, right? Like, martial arts is booming, has been booming for years. Why? Because people like to do things that are difficult. They don't let you spar right out of the gate. You learn how to move first. So, like, learning how to move is so important, but human motivation is number one, and that is they need to see that they can do it pretty quick. Within a few swings at least.
Yeah.
30 minutes maybe.
Yep.
They won't go with you the full hour. They won't. Most people I think are out, will check out in the first 15. If you don't have them in the first 15, you might be able to rescue them in the next 15, but if you don't have them there, they're out.
Yeah, I think that's really good from the teaching perspective and from the student perspective there. I think I will leave everybody with this, and that's just this theory of the baseball swing and golf swing. Like, it's just... you can compartmentalize them, and they can be two different things, and they can help you. One thing that I thought was really interesting, and the highlight of my lesson here, was I could tell that everything that we were wrestling with mentally, what we were talking about in text last night, what prompted this whole thing in the first place, when I was doing the reps correctly, I told you earlier, I said, dude, I felt something activate, like in my glute.
Now you sound like Tiger, like circa 2014. My glutes weren't activating.
But like I told you, I go, dude,
Right.
I felt like TV static, like go down my left leg.
You're like, oh, that was different.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, my body is like actually responding differently, which let me know that we were down the right rabbit hole. We were down the right track. And so I guess what I'll say to end this whole thing is this: we were really creative. We were willing to try something out that was completely foreign to both of us.
And we had to shut off the implicit memory, tying back to the last podcast.
Correct.
And use that explicit of like, I'm not going to view this through the old lens. Like, I'm going to view it as it is.
Yep.
And be willing to take whatever I get from it.
And because of that, we completely myth busted what we previously thought was the problem, which was that I couldn't rotate my hips well.
Correct.
And it was just us melding our minds together, me with my baseball, you with my golf, and we found exactly what we need to do for the future.
And I finally was
work.
able to make sense of some of my instincts when I teach a lot of baseball players.
Yeah.
They're all amazed I can fix it that fast. And it's like, oh, that's why my brain's doing that, and that's why that works.
And you are fixing it, but they're on tier 1 or tier 2.
Right.
And it's going to be a long overhaul to get to tier 3.
And they may, and guess what? To break 80, you don't have to have tier 3.
Yeah.
But if you want to get to where you're breaking par on the regular, you might be able to one-off it after years of training. But like, you're gonna probably need to change that and be willing to do the hard work.
And that tracks with my scores right now. I've done the hard work of breaking 80 and mastering or getting close to mastering. I'm not even gonna say mastering.
You're on the journey.
Of course management.
Mastery is a journey. It's not a destination.
Right. And of course management and fundamentals in golf swings. And luckily, my athletic ability has been able to take me to break 80. But now this is where the real work starts in order to get me to shoot low all the time.
Yep.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all for listening to this not so short episode. I mean, it's short, but it's a medium episode. We snuck it in of the No Mulligans podcast. We got 3% on the computer.
Oh, gosh, hurry up.
We got to hurry it up. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing. It's the No Mulligans podcast. Scott and Jack. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.